All right, good morning, wonderful students. I am out today. I'm at a training at the district office. I will be back tomorrow, but let's talk about what your plan is for the day. So our objective is to analyze concepts of culture, including traits, diffusion, acculturation, assimilation, globalization, and cultural regions. On the agenda, we're going to take some quick notes on Chapter 4, Key Issue 2, and then when you're done, I have an activity for you where you're going to be looking at different types of folk housing, and then when you come back tomorrow, we're going to take a look at folk food. So homework reminders, Chapter 4, Key Issue 4 is due for Wednesday. Please make sure you are working on your vocab, and if you have not finished your unbiased and reliable sources and fake news assignment, please make sure that you have that ready to go to turn in for tomorrow. So go ahead, put your note packet from today in front of you, and we'll go ahead and get started on our notes. So the key question that we're focusing on today is, where are folk and popular material culture distributed? And we're going to take a look specifically at folk and popular housing. When you come in tomorrow, we're going to take a look at folk and popular food. So the distribution of folk and popular housing. We have some impact of the environment on folk housing. Okay, so the environment influences what housing materials and what types of housing we see in different places. So the available resources influence what materials are used to actually build the homes. For example, are they built out of stone or grass or sod or animal skin? It really just kind of depends on what's available at that particular location. The two most common building resources are wood and brick. And then also the climate and local topography influence the design of housing structures. So R.W. McCall, he was a geographer who compared houses in 4 Chinese villages. And what he found were that all of them used similar building materials, including adobe and timber from the desert poplar tree. But there were distinct designs in each location that were attributed to local cultural preference and local geography. So the actual location of the place has an impact on what the homes are going to look like in that place. So here are some examples. All of these, again, in China. You can see the different areas in China where these photos were taken. And although the building materials were similar, you can see the actual style of the homes is very different in each of these different pictures. Next on your note sheet, you have sacred spaces. So sacred spaces in folk housing are common in particular places in the world. So distinctive forms of folk houses may derive from religious or other customary beliefs. So some houses have sacred features, for example, a sacred wall or a particular door orientation that is significant to their religion or to their beliefs, or certain corners being significant in the home as well. So a couple examples, houses in the south central part of Java face south, which is the direction of the South Sea goddess, who they believe holds the key to Earth. In Fiji, the eastern wall of a home is considered sacred, and then in Madagascar, actually all directions except south have significance in the folk houses in that particular place. So here's another example. You can see one in Laos and then another in Thailand. So there are 2 different kind of renderings of what an average neighborhood might look like. So what I can see here is maybe what we would see like in the US, right, where you've got your road and then you've got homes that are aligned along that street. They're all kind of equal distance from the front of the house to the actual road. And what you can see in this one is it's customary, or the belief in Laos, in this particular area, is that you would never want to sleep with your feet pointing towards your neighbor's head, because in some cultures, feet are considered to be like dirty or not pure or not clean. So what you can see here, and there's like these little drawings to show it, here would be this neighbor here would be this neighbor, and their heads are facing one another. And then this neighbor, the feet of this neighbor are facing the feet of this neighbor, because you would never want to put your feet near someone else's head because that would be considered disrespectful. So that's kind of interesting. And then over here, we can see that these homes are staggered, whereas like these are in a straight line. So these are staggered because in this particular community in Thailand, the belief is that evil spirits can only travel in straight lines. So if you stagger the homes, then they would not be able to travel in a straight line and reach every single home within that community. So just a couple examples of folk culture and beliefs having an impact on the housing in particular places. Next on your note sheet, we've got a little bit about U.S. folk housing. So the style of pioneer homes reflected whatever upscale style was prevalent on the East Coast from wherever these people came from. So remember, think, early United States, settlers coming from different countries in Europe and bringing with them the style of home that was popular in England or wherever they're migrating from. So geographer Fred Kniffen identified 3 major hearths or nodes of folk house forms in the United States. So you've got the Middle Atlantic, the Lower Chesapeake, and then New England. In the Middle Atlantic, the principal house type was known as an I house with 1 room deep and at least 2 rooms wide. So you'd kind of have like a hallway going through the middle. You'd have at least 2 rooms on each side, and the house would be 2 rooms, or at least 1 room deep as well. In the Lower Chesapeake, the principal house type was characterized by 1 story with a steep roof and chimneys at either end. And I'm sure you can kind of picture what that would look like from movies that you've seen or paintings that you've seen. And then in New England, the principal house style was a box-shaped house with a central hall. So the hall would run down the middle, and then your rooms would be on either side. And we can see evidence of these 3 different styles in homes that are on the East Coast that are really, really old, right? That are hundreds of years old, because new housing styles, popular housing in the United States today, no longer reflects this kind of folk housing character. So these are our 3 different regions. Again, so we've got New England, we've got Middle Atlantic, Lower Chesapeake, and wherever these migrants are tending to come from, they're bringing with them their style of house, and that kind of diffuses throughout the northern part of the United States. Middle Atlantic diffuses through kind of the center of the East Coast, and then Lower Chesapeake straight down the East Coast towards Florida. So U.S. popular housing. We actually don't see folk housing evident in the United States like we used to. And if we do, it's because they're really old homes that are still existing. So since the mid-20th century, houses display popular culture rather than regional influences. Most people no longer build their own houses, but instead homes are mass-produced by construction companies. And houses show the influence of shapes, materials, detailing, and other features of architectural style that are in vogue or that are popular at any one point in time. So this area, Lake Villa, is a really good example of this. So in Lake Villa, especially the neighborhoods that are off of Deep Lake Road, almost all of these neighborhoods were mass-produced by construction companies, by builders who come in, they buy the land, they divide up the lots, you go into the sales office, you can pick Model A or Model B or Model C, and the houses within the neighborhood look really similar to one another. The layout might be flip-flopped, or they might be different colors, but there's really only maybe 5 or 6 different models that you can choose from. So that's what popular housing in the United States looks like today. Some people do, but it is less common for people to go out, buy their own lot, hire their own builder, hire the architect to come up with the plans, and build a unique distinctive type of home. That's just not how the housing market really works in the United States anymore, and that's due to popular culture. And one thing that you're going to find is that popular culture tends to destroy folk culture. So as you see an increase in popular culture, you see a decline in folk culture, which is why we no longer see these styles of homes like we did historically in the United States. So here are just some images of popular housing styles in the United States over time. So if we look at the top here, we can see the ranch style home that was really common from 1935 to 1975. Here we've got minimal traditional, the split level, which was super common from 55 to 75. I know my dad grew up in a home that looked just like this. Contemporary from the 40s to 80s, and then the shed style down here beginning in the 1960s. And then on this side, we've just got kind of a different style of popular housing. The Neo-French from beginning in the 1970s. You've got the Neo-Colonial in the 1950s. So just some different styles of houses over time, because remember, popular culture is constantly changing. But what is interesting, if you live in an older area of Lake Villa, or if you live in Lindenhurst, you might be able to match the style of your house to one of these styles, and then ask your parents, when was the house built? And if it's a split level, it's fairly likely that it was built between 1955 and 1975, which is kind of cool. All right, so that's our notes for today. The next thing that you are going to do is you are going to look up some different folk style housing throughout the world. So on your note sheet, there are some directions for you, and you're going to go ahead and just simply complete a Google search. So use Google to research traditional folk housing in the following regions. Write down notes about the distinctive features of this type of housing below. So remember, it's going to be impacted by the environment of that local place. So tell me about the building materials. Tell me about the style. Any information that you can provide about the folk housing in these areas. And now, remember, like Central America is a pretty large region, so there's probably not going to be only one style. But do your best to get down some information about the types of folk housing you might see in each of these different regions. So, and then if you happen to finish this early, you can spend the rest of your time working on reading guide or vocab. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you all tomorrow.